Welcome to the Smart Couple Podcast. Welcome to the Smart Couple Podcast.
That's the best one.
Yeah, nice. And who are you?
Hello, I am Neva.
Hello, I'm Lucian. I am 7.5 years old. I'm Jayson's son.
Hello, I am Neva. I am 5 3/4 years old. I am Jason's daughter.
All right. Greetings, gnomes and fairies. That's my son and daughter there. I'm Jayson Gaddis. I'm your host of the Smart Couple Podcast. Welcome to episode 71. And I'm bringing on my wife here on this episode again. So stay tuned. If you're just joining us, this podcast is for growth development-oriented people who want to have excellent relationships, particularly sexy, thriving, long-term partnership. Knowing that when you get that nut cracked, the rest of your relationships don't get less challenging, but your ability to face all of those challenges is exponentially increased. If you're coming back, welcome back again, and happy to have your ear so I can bend it for a little bit here. Today, Ellen and I are going to get into the distancer-pursuer dynamic. This is incredibly common, and in this episode, we're going to focus just on the pursuer who is dealing with a distancer. In this episode, we're going to speak to the pursuer who is dealing with someone who is pulling away, detaching, distancing, shutting down, etc., and how to deal with that. Okay? In the next episode, episode 72, we're going to cover if you are a distancer and you're with a pursuer, how to deal with that kind of partner. Okay, so we're trying to hit you both here in these two episodes because we think it's going to be really valuable for you. All right, I wanted to give a quick shout out to my Smart Couple listeners who are couples who meet every week as a group to listen to the podcast and then have a discussion. I thought this was really cool when I first heard about this. Denise and TJ in Wisconsin listen to this podcast and then share it with their friends, and they have a dialogue, a conversation about it, from what I understand, and it sounds really, really fruitful. And Denise and TJ were just out here for the relationship school live relationship workshop, and I believe had some big experiences that were helpful. So thanks, guys, and to your community out there, I really appreciate your ears and your listenership, and just thanks for being couples that are willing to get together, have these vulnerable conversations, go there and chew on the material, and it's really inspiring. So if you are like TJ and Denise, and you're out there and you've started some kind of couples group or listening group, I'd love to hear about it. And that's the kind of thing that is fun to share here on the podcast. This was news to me until they told me. And it sounds like it's really helpful. So thanks, and let us know if that's going on for you. In that vein, I wanted to underline a couple points. And maybe you can learn something from Denise and TJ here, which is if you take this material seriously and you begin to meet in community, I guarantee you are going to see some results in your relationship that are helpful because you're practicing the tools, you're taking risks, and you're allowing yourself to be seen in the intensity, the drama, the vulnerability, the pain, the love, the brilliance, the brightness of your marriage or long-term relationship. And there's something really potent to come out of the closet and be a real person and say, hey, raise your hand and say, hey, I struggle in my marriage and it's really intense. How the hell do people do this? Because if you're, many years in, you get that it's intense and the challenge doesn't go away. And so the smart people learn how to deal with the challenge rather than run away. So I strongly encourage you, listeners, to get in community in some way. Now, I have one home for you if you are interested. So listen up. If you want to go the distance in a long-term partnership and do really well, one of the variables that I talk about that is essential is not only having a partner where you have shared context and shared language and shared tools on the journey of long-term intimacy and partnership, but also people around us that can help us, that can see through our games and our patterns, and who are willing to call BS on us when we come to them and say, hey, my partner's being a jerk. I can't believe it. Why don't you just collude with my story? And I'm just so right and they're so wrong. When that type of thing happens, we want people in our lives, and you want people in your life that are saying, time out. You talk a lot about your partner and how they're making mistakes or they're not stepping up. But what about you? What are you doing or not doing that's contributing to this whole mess? So having people in your life that can help you take full responsibility for your part in the dynamic is essential to getting anywhere. And when you hire someone like a therapist or a coach or someone, that's their job. Their job is to see you in your pattern and to call you out in a loving way and say, well, you're doing your thing. You're doing that pattern. Do you want to repeat that, or should we learn a new tool and learn a new skill here and work through some old injury so that you can then show up in a way that you're kind of claiming you want your partner to, because you're doing the same thing, right? Or some other version of it. So it's essential to have people around us with common language that are willing to challenge and support us. Okay, most people go to their friends and family for support, and it's very, very limited. And I don't recommend friends and family. Every now and then a friend or family member can drop the zinger on you that really helps you in your partnership. That's rare. The norm is you go to friends and family and they tell you what you want to hear, and they don't want to make you more upset. So let's just pretend like everything's fine and you're fine and you're great. I can't believe you're with such a jerk. That kind of support is limited. So we want to love someone, which is what I talk about in episode 42, which means you challenge them and support them. So bottom line is, if you want to go the distance, you got to have community in your life and people around you, friends, and or maybe some family members that can challenge and support you, right? It's very, very helpful. Next, you got to have great guidance. So for a limited time, I'm reminding you that I'm offering an invitation into my private community, the Relationship School Roots community, where you get live group coaching from me. And right now, it's the only way I'm working with people to get direct access to me. I'm not taking on private clients in this moment. I may, but in this moment, I'm not. And this is my way to work with people. And it's really powerful to be coached and be given feedback and get some laser insight into your situation on an every other week basis, because that's what it is. So right now, go to jasongaddis.com/roots if you want to be involved in this community. It's a stellar group of people who are all learning the same kind of tools that we learn here. They're investing in themselves, so therefore they're getting a result, versus people who don't invest in themselves and just kind of hope and pray that it gets better. So get community in your life, get some challenge and support in your life from people who can actually do it in a skillful way and are willing to get on a group call, this type of thing on a regular basis, because you're going to simply get where you want to be going faster and more efficiently with probably a lot less drama. All right. So you can do what TJ and Denise are doing, and or you can go to jasongaddis.com/roots, and for $1, you can have your relationship life change permanently for the better. As always, stay tuned to the very end for your action step. And let's get after it with Ellen. Okay, I'd like to welcome back my wife, Ellen.
Thank you, Jayson.
Yeah. What's up? How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Very well. I've been married to you for 9 years, so that's pretty cool.
It is very cool.
Yeah, boy, we earn it, don't we, around here?
Yes. We earn it and reap the rewards.
That's
for
right.
Sure.
Totally. Okay, today and next episode, we're doing a 2-part series here on dealing with distancers and pursuers in our relationships. And in this episode, we wanted to talk specifically to the pursuer. So if you're out there in a relationship and you find yourself going after someone, longing to get more connection or wanting to be with someone, and they're not really, for whatever reason, they're pulling away or distancing, this episode is for you.
Yeah. We wanted to start it with sort of describing the dynamic you might be in with this person. So you might find yourself with someone who just talks a lot less than you do, doesn't communicate as much about their feelings. And when they're under stress or they have a lot going on, they want to be alone. They want to be left alone. They want space. Just generally more comfortable and seems to do better with having alone time. Would you say?
Yeah. And less connection or something is what they might report.
Right.
Yeah. So we get that if this is you and you're in this type of dynamic, that this is hard and can trigger you into a lot of different feelings. And it can be really frustrating to be in this type of dynamic. And we know this one from personal experience for sure, both with ourselves and with all the people we work with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think if you're pursuing this person, it depends on how much this is going on, but if this is the ongoing dynamic, it can feel really frustrating. You might start to wonder, do I just need too much? Is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong with them? Something wrong with us? It can bring up a lot of fears and concerns about how are we going to do this? This isn't sustainable or something.
Yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So what is happening with your partner? What are some ideas about what is going on with them? Do they hate me? Are they just not interested in a relationship? So we have about 4 points we want to cover here quickly.
Okay, so what's going on with the person who's distancing? So one idea, we don't know them, but one idea is that they are someone who prefers more space. They prefer and are maybe pretty good at calming themselves down, feeling less stressed when they have time to themselves.
Yeah, and it may be that they're calming themselves down. It may also be that they're not good at calming themselves down, which is why they take space to calm themselves down, to get away from discomfort.
True. Yes. And I think sometimes if you notice that your partner takes space and they come back and they're not necessarily like, now I'm gosh, thank you. What was it you needed?
Right.
Their alone time might not actually be that restorative. I don't know what they're doing, but you're right. I think you're speaking to something, Jayson, where someone can take space, but they're not really calming down. They're just moving away from something hard and not figuring out how to address it better.
Yeah. So the second point here, in terms of what's happening with this person, the distancer, is they probably feel stress on some level when they're pursued. There's some level of activation going on in their nervous system, in their body, in the way they operate in life. It just feels stressful, and they might already feel stressed in life, and they don't want more stress. So again, they want to move away from stress.
Sure, like it's another demand or another challenge, and they're already feeling a lot of demands and challenge.
Yeah, and they just feel when you're like, if I'm the distancer and you're pursuing me, that can feel stressful in and of itself.
Sure. Sure. Yes. I see that. Yeah. And this person, this distancer might also, come from a family or grew up in a situation where that's sort of what they did. Everyone was encouraged to be self-reliant, or maybe this particular person was. If they were upset, they went away and came back, and eventually things got better, but they don't really know how. There might be a historical pattern of, yeah, when I'm upset, I'm on my own, or I'm by myself, or uh, I learned how to take care of myself. I got used to being alone, figuring things out by myself. So that might be in there too, where they don't really know how to, or aren't used to collaborating and using the relationship to take care of themselves.
Yeah, so the third point Ellen's speaking to here is it's like a habit. It's just become a habit that probably is chronic and lifelong, where this is just part of their childhood strategy or MO is I'm better off on my own, and so I'll just keep doing that. So they're doing what they know.
Doing what they know, and it's not bad. It's just can be limited, especially in a long-term partnership. It's obviously not going to work.
Yeah.
To do that one for everything.
Yeah, it was pretty limited for me. And then the fourth point we wanted to mention about what's going on with this person who's distancing is that it's possible if they investigated a little more deeply that it might turn out that they're afraid of too much closeness. And whatever happens when someone is close to them and knows them inside, and there's a level of vulnerability there that could be terrifying. We're just uncomfortable to feel that close. So we want to assert the possibility here that there's some fear happening with your distancing partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we bring up these possibilities of what's going on so that you can have potentially a little more insight as to how you want to handle them.
Yeah, and as always, we encourage you to try to get to know them here. And they may be the type of personality that doesn't know themselves here or doesn't want to talk about it. But we want you to just encourage you to stay with your curiosity. So we'll kind of transition into that next here when we talk about how we suggest you deal with this type of partner.
Right. The next thing we want to talk about is how to deal with this person. And we have 5 ideas here for you to consider. And the first one is no walking on eggshells or tiptoeing around this person, as well as no shaming or blaming this person. And sort of being too careful or too aggressive is not going to work here. It's not going to threatening them or distancing from them or being overly cautious around them is probably only going to trigger more distancing from them.
Yeah, what happens when, Ellen, will you say a little bit more about why would I be walking around on eggshells with a person like this that's distancing?
Yeah, I think the fear for the pursuer would be, I don't want to push them away more. I want to try and give them space that it seems like they need. Meanwhile, I'm kind of holding all this anxiety and need that I'm hoping we get to at some point. And so it just can feel like a lot of tension, I think, in the room or between the couple that both people feel and maybe can't quite articulate. So, we would recommend being as transparent as you can and as direct as you can, as honest as you can, versus trying to manipulate some yeah, I'm fine with this, but I'm not actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this can be tricky with often the distancer. I know for me, when I was in the distancer role for many years, I felt irritable already. I was struggling with myself, and so I'd have these little porcupine quills that would come out, And if my partner's wanting connection, she feels the porcupine quills and doesn't want to come any closer because I'm sort of defending in a way. And so that it makes sense that you would, if you're this pursuer person, that you would tiptoe around because you don't want to get stung, so to speak.
Right. Right. And don't want to push you away further. Like
Yes.
there's a sense the pursuer kind of knows, gosh, the more I'm asking or, trying to connect with you, it's not really helping. And I can remember that with you early in our relationship where it kind of didn't matter what I said or did. It wasn't really helping you turn towards a relationship. That was something that wasn't going to change just based on my strategy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. That's right.
But there were things I could do to make it worse, and that we're trying to keep you from doing those things.
Yeah. And then just to talk about this other point, the no shaming and blaming. So again, another example, if Ellen in the past had been pulling away from me for whatever reason, the more I pursued her sometimes in kind of an aggressive way, like, come on, we need to have this talk, the more that drove her away. So it didn't really work. So that's what Ellen's reminding us here is no shaming and blaming. Like if you come with a lot of aggressive energy and you're probably not in your heart, and you're in your head and you're afraid and you're angry and hurt, chances are it's not going to land very well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
All right, let's move on to the second one.
Yeah.
Second point here that we suggest is to self-reflect and to get curious about what's happening on your side. And you can do this by just stopping your habitual pursuit that feels maybe unconscious to you, you just pursue, or you might have a little awareness that, gosh, I find myself in the pursuer seat all the time and it's getting kind of exhausting. Just pause. Just hit the pause button here and go inside and self-reflect and ask yourself, like, what's getting triggered in here? And you might come up with things like, well, a feeling of abandonment, of rejection, a feeling of loneliness, and I'm hurt, I'm really angry. You might come up with a list of what's actually happening for you. Because what tends to happen is pursuers focus on the other person most of the time to try to get what they want. And if you know this, that you're tracking your partner a lot and you're noticing their every move, sometimes you forget about yourself and what's actually happening because you're so focused on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really good information to have, because the next step that we want to speak to here is speaking your need for connection in a way your partner can hear. So you have to do a little investigating and self-reflection to have a better sense of what's getting triggered in me here? What am I upset about? What if this has to do with my partner? What if this has to do with just my history, my stories, my fears about what I'm not going to get here? These other pieces, understanding that. And then you actually can have something to share about yourself to your partner, which is different than trying to get them to talk, trying to get them to engage, trying to find out where they're going, what's happening. It's different to bring your own information and, hey, I have something I want to contribute and that I'd like you to hear me out on.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important to do your best to talk when we say articulate your need for connection in a way they can hear. It means like if I just say, hey, I want to have a talk and I need to talk, that also can be triggering for your partner, which is fine. You can do that. But we want to try to find out what they care about and what they're interested in and find an entry point there. So for example, if my partner is into watching the game, then I might first talk about what lights them up and what they're interested in about the game. And eventually that I make my way into, hey, by the way, I miss connecting and I have some things to own over here and talk about that have been challenging for me. Rather than, hey, I want to talk about you and why you're so, distant.
Yes. Yeah.
And we go into this more in our courses, but we just wanted to mention that one little point there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fourth tip we have is to support them taking space when they can be direct and put time limits on it. So we want to definitely send them the message, hey, honey, I support you in, it seems like you need space, maybe even more than me. And I totally support that because I know that sometimes when you get space, you come back more available and resourced to hang out with me. Now, we only want to say that if we actually have evidence, like there was that one time when you went on that trip and you came back and you were completely present with me, or that one time when you went exercising and then you came back and you just were more available. So cite, if you can, cite an actual memory you have to say, remember that time. And if for whatever reason that's not happening, you can set this up to be like, hey, I'm guessing if you really took genuine space and you didn't feel like you had to stay in touch with me or kind of take care of me, I'm guessing you might feel more resourced when you come back so that we can have a good connection. So we're trying to send the message like, look, I support you in taking space. It seems like it could really help you.
Yeah. Yeah. And another piece of that is when you're in this conversation is there's something about having a agreement about how long and when you're returning that can be helpful too. That can be really helpful to you as the pursuer to know, oh, okay, when you come home from work, it seems like you need half an hour to, what do you need? Half an hour, something to transition. Having a sense of time can help the pursuer relax, and you can advocate for that. Like, because sometimes it's not so much that the person needs some time alone that's upsetting. It's the sense that I don't know when they're coming back, and I don't know if they're going to come back and actually be available.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, so time limits. Make sure you put time limits on it. Honey, I'd like to, I want to support you in taking space for a day, for an hour, for a week, whatever it is for you, and both agree on it.
Yeah. And the last part we want to mention was, someone who's a distancer in general is also potentially someone who's very independent. They have a real strength around their capacity to be self-reliant. That's a really strong, helpful quality to have in the world and in life. They probably have worked hard and done a lot of things on their own, and they've probably done that without much support from the outside. So, I think it's important for us to recognize that while right here in the relationship, the distancing can feel like a problem, there may be other places, and probably quite certainly are in their life and in the world, where their capacity to be alone and accomplish things on their own is really quite useful.
Yeah, so what we're saying here in point 5 is just to celebrate this aspect of themselves, their self-reliance, their independence, really see that as a strength of theirs. And even though it feels problematic to you, see how it's really helped them and benefited them in their life, and it's one of their superpowers.
Right, and it might even been part of what was attractive about them to you early on. That you liked that they were someone who really could be on their own and be okay, and you liked that. So just something to think about.
Yeah, great. So quickly to review, in terms of our 5 tips, if you're the pursuer dealing with the distancer, number 1, don't walk on eggshells or tiptoe or shame and blame them. Number 2, self-reflect, right? Pause and get curious about what's happening on your side and begin to take responsibility for that. And number 3, articulate your need for connection in a way they can hear. Number 4, support them taking space, especially when they can be direct about it, and put time limits on it. And number 5, celebrate this part of themselves that's independent and self-reliant. And then, Ellen, I wonder if you'd say something before we close about how dating might be different than if you're married with a distancer.
Right. We were talking about this as we were thinking about this podcast. I guess we just wanted to speak to the transition from dating to committed partnership, as in something like marriage. And, when we're dating someone, and especially early on, a lot of what we're working on is ourselves and how we show up. And so that's a big piece, sort of like how I want to handle this person and how I want to show up in this relationship. And then as we get more committed and potentially married or together for a long time, we think it really makes sense for the conversation to be moving towards how are we going to deal with these dynamics? How are we going to deal with each other? And do it in a way where we both feel cared for, supported, and challenged to be really our best selves here. So, that we just wanted to speak to that continuum, because I think that really that conversation evolves over time and with a commitment from a focus on myself to a focus on us.
Yeah. And so the dating is, how can I deal with this? Marriage might be, how can we deal with this? And there's some kind of transition pivot point there. Now, certainly it can happen as a we conversation when you're dating, but there can be a lot more fear involved and insecurity when one person's maybe wanting to commit and the other person isn't. And those are all conversations that you have to navigate. Often there's a lot more you have to navigate on your own. When you're finally committed and with someone and it's an agreement that you all have and you're all on the same page, yes, we're in a marriage now, or we're completely committed and exclusive, then we're encouraging that it's got to be a we conversation. Because the distance or pursuer dynamics don't necessarily go away in a marriage. In fact, they can get heightened even more given what happens with the attachment brain and how it starts to mimic our childhood experience. One partner will typically distance and one partner will typically pursue. But when you're dealing with when you're a team now dealing with this, and you start to get an understanding and some tools around this, it can be really workable and enjoyable and a way to get to know each other more, and you can really have each other's backs on how to address this.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks, Ellen. We're going to go round 2 in the next episode, and we hope this has been helpful here. And we certainly have lots more we could say, but we thought we'd just kind of take a slice here when you're the pursuer and you're with a distancer. Next week, it'll be you're the distancer and you're with a pursuer. What do you do? Okay. Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you, Jayson.
Okay, nice. Damn, I love that woman. Married 9 years this past weekend. Wow. And together 13 with some serious bumps in the road. I love having her here. It's a real treat to record this from our home. Sometimes the kids are in the house, most of the time they're not. And to just be telling about ourselves and how we work with people and the folks we interact with, because it's just such a vulnerable dance, this marriage thing and long-term partnership. So I just love you, Ellen, for coming on here and rocking it out with us wherever you are in this moment. So action step, Ellen and I were talking about how to deal essentially with a distancer, okay? Next week, we're going to talk about how to deal with a pursuer. But for you, if you're the pursuer wondering about your person pulling away or distancing in some way, one little action step, you can pick any out of the 5 that we mentioned. And I think a gentle approach into those 5 is the last one we mentioned, which is to celebrate and notice the distancer in their independence and self-reliance. See if you can give them an acknowledgement or affirmation that that is a strength of theirs. Yes, it impacts you. And see if you can find the resiliency, the strength, and the power in someone who can take care of themselves. Even though they might be look miserable or feel shut down, they're still taking care of themselves. And they've found a way that works for them. I'm not saying it's the best, okay? And it's something. So see if you can acknowledge that part of them as an entry point. And then I want to challenge you to go back and listen to the section on how to deal and those 5 steps, okay? 1, 2, the no eggshells, the self-reflection, the articulate your needs, and really see if you can support them taking space, especially if they can be direct about it, all right? Okay, folks. And a reminder, get in community. Don't be alone in your marriage struggles. Get together with other couples, or if your partner isn't into this podcast and doesn't care at all, then get involved in our Relationship Roots community. For $1, try it out, okay? jasongaddis.com/roots. And that'll get you access, and you can join our next call, which is every other Wednesday. And it's when this podcast comes out. So there's always going to be fresh material for you to work with. There's never a dull moment in a marriage. And if there is, then you bring that. My marriage is dull and dead. What the hell do I do? Because chances are some part of you might be dull and dead. You might have deadened a part of you to keep connection with your partner, which is supposed to be painful, folks. So get out of that straitjacket mentality of I've got to do this myself and be a strong person, and try to get in relationship with other people on the journey who are listening to this podcast, who will challenge and support you to go to the next level. All right. Have a beautiful rest of your evening, morning, day, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.